The small-town courthouse sat quietly on a crisp autumn morning, its brick facade glowing warmly under the early sun. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but quiet. The murmur of conversations filled the air, a mixture of curiosity, impatience, and the faint nervous energy that always accompanied court proceedings. Families sat on wooden benches, some fidgeting with their coats or clasping hands tightly. Lawyers shuffled through papers, tapping pens on polished desks, while clerks typed rapidly at computers, creating a low hum of organized chaos. The scent of polished wood and old paper mingled with a faint aroma of coffee, hinting at the long morning ahead. Judge Eleanor Wilson, a woman of keen intelligence and a reputation for fairness, presided over the courtroom with her usual composed authority. Her robe flowed gracefully as she rose from her bench, the wooden gavel in her hand signaling the beginning of the proceedings. Behind her, the American flag hung proudly, a symbol of order and justice, while the state seal glimmered subtly in the morning light. Today was a routine day for her, filled with hearings and minor cases. But the energy in the room suggested something slightly different, an undercurrent of anticipation that she could feel even before the first case began. At the front of the courtroom, standing with measured precision, was Officer Daniels, a veteran of over a decade in law enforcement. His uniform was crisp, his polished shoes gleaming under the overhead lights. At his side stood Rex, his loyal canine partner. Rex was a large German shepherd, muscles rippling beneath his sleek black and tan coat, eyes sharp and alert. He had been trained for years in tracking, detection, and obedience, but those who knew him well understood that beneath the disciplined exterior lay a surprising gentleness. Children, in particular, seemed to elicit an almost human warmth from him, a softening of his usually intense demeanor. Today, however, no one knew how significant that gentle side would become. Among the crowd was a tiny figure, no more than 3 years old, perched on a bench next to her mother. The toddler's wide eyes roamed the courtroom, taking in the tall judge, the uniformed officers, and the imposing presence of Rex. Her small hand gripped her mother's tightly, seeking reassurance in a world that suddenly seemed very large. She had never been inside a courtroom before, but something about the polished wood, the hushed tones, and the air of authority fascinated her. Her mother, a young woman with soft brown hair and gentle features, whispered quietly, reminding her daughter to stay calm and still, though her own curiosity made her smile. The toddler's gaze inevitably fell on Rex. At first, she simply observed, taking in the dog's sleek coat, alert ears, and focused expression. There was a hint of wariness in her eyes, a natural instinct, but it quickly gave way to curiosity. She had seen dogs before, of course, but none like Rex. This dog moved with such confidence. Yet there was a calmness in the way he stood, a stillness that suggested intelligence and patience rather than aggression. For reasons she couldn't articulate, she felt drawn to him. Officer Daniels noticed the child immediately. He had seen many people react to Rex in different ways, some fearful, some fascinated, but there was something unusual about the toddler's attention. She wasn't scared, nor was she overly excited. She simply watched, her head slightly tilted, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. Daniels crouched slightly, offering Rex a subtle command to remain calm. The dog's tail swished once, slow and deliberate, acknowledging his handler while keeping his gaze fixed on the little girl. The courtroom itself was a typical blend of tension and routine. The judge called the first minor hearing to order, reading through procedural details and preliminary motions. Lawyers interjected with polite phrases, witnesses shifted nervously, and spectators whispered to one another. Yet, amid all of this, the toddler remained captivated by Rex. She leaned slightly forward on the bench, her small fingers gripping the edge, watching every subtle movement of the dog as if decoding a secret language. Even the gallery of adults began to notice. Whispers spread quietly among them. "Look at that little one watching the dog," one person murmured. "She's not scared at all," another observed. The atmosphere subtly shifted. The courtroom's usual formality, interspersed with soft chuckles and quiet admiration for the toddler's bravery. There was something undeniably magnetic about the scene, the contrast between innocence and authority, curiosity and discipline, child and canine. The toddler's mother leaned closer, speaking in a hushed tone, her voice a mixture of caution and encouragement. "Be gentle, sweetheart," she whispered, "but it's okay. He's a good dog." The words were barely audible over the courtroom's ambient noise, yet they seemed to resonate. The child nodded slightly, her expression serious for a moment, then broke into a tiny, anticipatory smile. She was ready. Rex, sensing the change in energy, relaxed slightly. His ears perked forward, eyes softening ever so subtly. He had been trained to detect fear, hesitation, and danger, yet here was a presence entirely different. Innocence radiated from the toddler, an unspoken trust that seemed to bridge the gap between child and beast. Officer Daniels watched carefully, heart quietly swelling. He knew Rex well enough to anticipate behavior, yet he also recognized that sometimes moments like this couldn't be predicted. The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Judge Wilson paused mid-proceeding, glancing down at the scene with mild curiosity. Clerks and spectators alike tilted their heads, sensing a moment that was quietly extraordinary, though none could yet describe why. Even the lawyers, papers in hand, took note, their professional composure giving way to subtle smiles and intrigued glances. It was in this stillness, this charged pause of expectation, that the story's true beginning quietly formed. A small child, a disciplined canine, and the silent recognition of an imminent connection. A simple moment that promised to transcend the normal rhythms of courtroom life. No one knew it yet, but the events about to unfold would captivate everyone present, leaving an imprint of wonder and warmth that would be recounted again and again, both locally and across the nation. And then, without warning, the toddler took a tiny, brave step forward, leaning slightly over the edge of the bench. The murmurs in the courtroom softened into attentive silence, and all eyes turned toward the child, toward the dog, toward the moment when innocence would meet duty in a way no one could have expected. Rex stood at attention, his powerful frame almost filling the front of the courtroom. Yet his movements were precise, controlled, and deliberate. His coat, a mix of rich black and golden brown hues, glimmered under the overhead lights, reflecting both the discipline of his training and the vitality of his health. His ears were perked, eyes sharp, constantly scanning the room, noting every subtle movement, a clerk shifting papers, a spectator leaning forward, a child's fingers tapping nervously against the wooden bench. To anyone unfamiliar with police dogs, he appeared intimidating, a living symbol of authority. Yet those who knew him or even observed closely understood there was more to Rex than mere obedience. Officer Daniels stood beside him, a calm presence in stark contrast to the intense energy radiating from the dog. He had worked with Rex for over 6 years, forging a bond that went far beyond handler and canine. Rex understood every subtle cue from Daniels. A shift in stance, a whispered command, or a gentle touch could alter the dog's entire demeanor. Today, however, Daniels sensed a tension in Rex that was unusual, not fear, not aggression, but curiosity. Something about the toddler in the gallery seemed to intrigue him, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Rex's training was extensive. He had undergone rigorous instruction in obedience, detection, tracking, and search and rescue missions. He could identify scents with uncanny precision, pursue suspects across difficult terrain, and protect his handler without hesitation. Yet beneath this professional exterior was a side few people saw, a gentle, intuitive nature that emerged only in the presence of kindness, warmth, or innocence. It was a paradox of contrasts, discipline intertwined with tenderness, a balance that made him extraordinary among law enforcement animals. As Daniels adjusted Rex's leash slightly, he whispered softly, "Easy, buddy. Stay focused, stay calm." Rex's tail swished in acknowledgement, muscles relaxing just enough to indicate compliance. Yet his eyes remained fixed on the toddler. He was trained to recognize emotional energy, to sense fear, aggression, and uncertainty, and this tiny human radiated neither. Instead, she emitted curiosity, trust, and the pure innocence of youth, all of which Rex seemed to process in a way that bordered on understanding. The courtroom itself seemed to notice the dog. Jurors, spectators, and even the attorneys occasionally glanced toward him, admiring the perfect balance of strength and composure. To many, Rex represented law and order, an embodiment of authority within the room. Yet there was something almost magnetic about him. His posture, while disciplined, held a certain softness in the eyes that suggested a readiness for interaction, a receptivity that was rare in a K9 of his caliber. It was as though he was waiting for the right person or moment to reveal that hidden side. Daniels remembered the day he first met Rex at the police academy. The dog had been reserved, cautious, and highly alert. Few trainers had managed to unlock the warmth beneath his disciplined exterior, but Daniels had a patience that matched Rex's own intelligence. Over months of training, he learned to speak a language beyond words. Gestures, glances, and subtle body movements communicated volumes. Together, they became a team unmatched in both skill and intuition, a partnership that inspired colleagues and intimidated adversaries alike. Yet none of their previous experiences had prepared Daniels for what was about to unfold in this courtroom. The toddler remained in the gallery, her wide eyes fixed on Rex. She leaned slightly forward on the bench, her small hands gripping the edge, tiny fingers curling around the smooth wood. Daniels noticed the subtle shift in Rex. His tail stopped its slow swish, ears angled forward, and his head tilted slightly. He was observing, processing, assessing. The child's presence was unlike that of other humans. There was no pretense, no hidden motive, just pure, unfiltered curiosity. Daniels could almost see Rex's mind working, decoding her energy, evaluating whether it was safe, genuine, and worthy of engagement. "Rex, stay," Daniels murmured quietly, more to himself than the dog. The command was soft, almost unnecessary, for Rex was already attuned to the situation. Yet the subtle reinforcement reminded the dog that, while curiosity was acceptable, discipline remained paramount. This was not a training exercise, not a field operation. It was a courtroom, a space of rules, authority, and observation. And yet, in the presence of innocence, even Rex seemed willing to bend those rules in spirit, if not in practice. The child's mother watched nervously, whispering softly, "Be gentle, sweetheart. It's okay. Just be calm." She had seen Rex before in pictures and news clips, an imposing, intelligent K9 known in the community for his service and reliability. But nothing could have prepared her for the effect of seeing him live, standing just a few feet away from her daughter. The toddler's curiosity seemed to radiate, a silent invitation that was difficult to resist, even for a dog trained for caution and control. Rex's movements were subtle but deliberate. His head rotated slightly, eyes tracking the toddler's small gestures. A shift in weight, a soft murmur, a tentative reach forward. The dog's muscles flexed and relaxed, tail swishing in rhythm with his careful observation. There was intelligence in every motion, a sense of calculation intertwined with instinct. He was processing, learning, and preparing for the moment he would finally decide whether to respond. Daniel's colleagues noticed the interaction and exchanged quiet glances. They had witnessed countless scenarios in which Rex excelled, from high-risk operations to routine patrols, but the current scene was different. There was no threat, no mission, no law to enforce, just a child, a dog, and the invisible bridge of understanding slowly forming between them. Even the judge, a seasoned observer of human behavior, leaned slightly forward in curiosity, sensing that something remarkable was unfolding quietly before the formal proceedings could continue. The courtroom's usual rhythm, the shuffling of papers, murmured conversations, and distant gavel taps faded into background noise. The focus shifted entirely to the interplay of innocence and discipline, curiosity and experience. In that moment, Rex was more than a police dog. He was a being capable of connection, empathy, and response to unspoken emotion. His entire demeanor suggested readiness for engagement, yet tempered with the awareness of boundaries and respect for the courtroom's formality. The toddler, sensing the dog's attention, straightened slightly, a mixture of wonder and courage illuminating her expression. She did not speak yet. Words were unnecessary at this point. Her presence alone had captured Rex's attention, and her body language spoke volumes. It was as though she instinctively knew how to communicate across the divide of species, experience, and authority. Daniels watched silently, a mixture of pride, surprise, and anticipation building within him. And then, as if the universe had paused to allow the moment its full weight, the room fell into stillness. Eyes that had been wandering now focused on the child and the canine. Even the judge lowered her gaze, noting the intensity of the interaction without interrupting the proceedings. There was a collective awareness that something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would transform the routine monotony of the courtroom into a moment remembered for years to come. Rex's tail swished slowly once, a deliberate sign of acknowledgement. His body shifted slightly forward, maintaining discipline but indicating readiness. The toddler, encouraged by the subtle movement, took a tiny step forward on the bench, leaning toward the dog. There was no fear in her expression, only pure curiosity and trust. Daniels remained still, hands relaxed on the leash, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. It was a test of patience, awareness, and instinct, a meeting of two worlds, separated by age and species, yet drawn together by a single invisible thread. And so, the stage was set. The courtroom, once a place of formality and routine, now held its collective breath. The characters, the judge, the spectators, the officers were secondary to the quiet tension building between the toddler and the canine. In those silent seconds, the potential for a profound connection existed, one that would soon capture the hearts of everyone present and ripple far beyond the courthouse walls. The story had begun, not with words, but with attention, observation, and the subtle dance of trust forming across a quiet courtroom on an ordinary morning. The toddler sat, perched on the wooden bench, her tiny legs swinging back and forth, eyes locked on Rex. There was a quiet determination in her gaze, a spark that seemed far beyond her 3 years. She had watched him carefully, taking in every subtle motion, the tilt of his head, the slow sweep of his tail, the careful way his paws rested on the polished floor. To her, Rex was not just a big dog in a uniformed partnership. He was something alive, something almost magical, and she felt drawn toward him as if by an invisible thread. Her mother leaned closer, whispering gently, "Remember, sweetheart. Be calm. He's a good dog. Nothing to fear." The toddler nodded solemnly, the corners of her lips twitching into a small, brave smile. She had heard about police dogs before, and though she knew they were trained to be strong, to follow commands, she didn't feel fear. Instead, there was curiosity, a desire to connect. This small act, seemingly simple to anyone else, was a courageous step into a world of authority, discipline, and responsibility. Slowly, with measured care, the toddler climbed slightly onto the edge of the bench. Leaning forward, just enough to narrow the physical distance between herself and Rex. Her tiny fingers gripped the smooth wood, knuckles whitening slightly. The movement was subtle, but it caught the attention of everyone in the courtroom. Officer Daniels instinctively tightened his hold on the leash, alert to any sudden change in the dog's behavior, yet his body relaxed slightly, confident in Rex's training and temperament. Rex's head swiveled slightly, ears alert, eyes fixed intently on the small figure moving closer. He sniffed the air, noting the child's scent innocent, unassuming, and filled with the faint trace of curiosity and warmth. His tail swayed gently, a deliberate, cautious acknowledgement of her presence. He did not move forward yet, respecting the invisible boundary between them, but his attention was unwavering. The toddler's subtle bravery was met with equal measure of careful, intelligent observation. In the courtroom gallery, spectators began to murmur softly, noticing the unique moment unfolding. A few children in the audience leaned forward, fascinated by the exchange. Some adults whispered quietly, recognizing the significance of a toddler approaching a canine officer without hesitation or fear. The tension in the room shifted slightly, the usual formality of legal proceedings giving way to a collective, anticipatory curiosity. Every pair of eyes seemed to track the delicate interaction, fully aware that something remarkable was occurring. The toddler's mother whispered again, her voice a gentle anchor in the quiet courtroom. "You can say hello, or just smile. He'll understand." The child nodded, tilting her head slightly, her small fingers brushing against the bench as she prepared herself for the encounter. She was aware of the gravity of the moment in her own way, though her understanding of law enforcement or police dogs was limited. She instinctively recognized the opportunity for connection, the chance to bridge the gap between human and animal through nothing more than presence, curiosity, and trust. Officer Daniels observed silently, noting every shift in posture, every twitch of muscle in Rex's body. He had trained the dog for countless situations, but none had ever mirrored the simplicity and complexity of this moment. Here was a child, utterly fearless, approaching a professional canine, and the dog's reaction would reveal something deeper than training: empathy, intuition, and an emotional intelligence that often went unnoticed in public service animals. Daniels allowed the leash a subtle slack, giving Rex the freedom to respond without restriction, trusting his partner implicitly. The toddler leaned just a little further, her small face illuminated with a mix of anticipation and excitement. She extended a tiny hand, fingers trembling slightly, her innocence radiating in every subtle motion. The courtroom seemed to pause, the rhythm of daily proceedings halting, as if the universe itself had recognized the significance of this encounter. Even Judge Wilson, presiding over the minor hearing, tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Something extraordinary was about to unfold. Rex, trained to detect fear and deception in humans, processed the child's energy. There was no hesitation, no pretense, no false signal. He sensed pure curiosity, an honest attempt to communicate across species. Slowly, deliberately, he shifted his weight forward, lowering his head slightly to align with the toddler's height. His eyes, intelligent and expressive, met hers. In that moment, the distance between the disciplined canine and the tiny child seemed to dissolve, replaced by a quiet understanding that transcended commands or training. The spectators in the courtroom leaned closer, some holding their breath, others whispering in awe. There was a collective recognition that what was unfolding was far beyond routine. A toddler, with nothing but her presence, was forming a bond with a trained police dog, a bond that no one could have anticipated, a moment so pure it commanded attention. Even the adults, hardened by years of routine and legal proceedings, felt the tug of emotion, the irresistible pull of witnessing innocence meet authority in its most unguarded form. The child's mother watched, a mixture of pride and apprehension fluttering in her chest. She had taught her daughter about kindness and courage, but even she could not have predicted the effect those lessons would have in this moment. She whispered softly again, "It's okay, honey. Just be yourself." The words seemed to carry more than reassurance. They were permission, encouragement, and affirmation all at once. Finally, the toddler's tiny voice broke the silence. She leaned just slightly closer, and with a mix of courage and wonder, whispered 2 words. The courtroom, which had been quietly observing, seemed to hold its collective breath. Officer Daniels felt a shiver of anticipation run down his spine. He knew Rex well enough to anticipate his reaction, yet even he was uncertain how the dog would respond to such pure, unguarded human expression. Rex's reaction was subtle at first, a tilt of the head, ears slightly raised, a slow wag of his tail. Then, almost imperceptibly, he stepped a fraction closer, acknowledging the child's courage and trust. His eyes softened, the sharpness of discipline giving way to the warmth of recognition. The toddler smiled broadly, encouraged by the gentle response, and leaned just a little further, bridging the gap completely. What had begun as cautious curiosity now blossomed into connection, a shared understanding between child and canine. The courtroom erupted quietly, smiles spreading like a wave, eyes gleaming with delight. Whispered comments and soft laughter filled the room, punctuated by the occasional gasp of surprise. Witnesses, lawyers, and even the judge couldn't help but acknowledge the extraordinary nature of the scene. It was a rare moment, one that transcended the formalities of law and procedure, revealing the beauty of human-animal connection in its simplest and purest form. The toddler, oblivious to the magnitude of the attention, giggled softly, reaching out to pat Rex's head. The dog leaned into the touch, careful and measured, yet clearly responding with affection. Officer Daniels knelt slightly, stroking Rex's neck gently, pride and awe evident on his face. He had trained Rex for every imaginable scenario, but this unguarded moment of trust and recognition was something far more profound than training alone could produce. As the interaction continued, the courtroom remained enchanted. Adults and children alike watched in awe as the bond between toddler and canine deepened. It was a moment of pure emotion, of innocence meeting discipline, of curiosity being rewarded with trust. No one spoke. No one wanted to break the fragile, extraordinary silence. Here was a tiny child and a professional police dog, teaching everyone present a lesson about courage, connection, and the unexpected magic that can arise from the simplest gestures. And so, in those quiet seconds, a story began to take shape, a story that would captivate hearts, inspire communities, and remind everyone that even in the most formal and structured places, extraordinary moments can emerge from innocence, courage, and the willingness to reach out. The toddler's approach had been tentative, brave, and purposeful, and the result was nothing short of miraculous. The first chapter of an unforgettable bond that would be remembered for years to come. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the toddler leaned forward, tiny hand trembling ever so slightly, fingers brushing against the edge of the wooden bench. She had watched Rex for what felt like an eternity, analyzing every tilt of his head, every subtle shift of his muscular body. His eyes, alert and intelligent, followed her every movement, reflecting curiosity and patience in equal measure. The air was thick with anticipation. No one had spoken, yet the room felt alive with unspoken energy, the quiet intensity of a moment, poised on the edge of discovery. Her mother whispered softly, a tremor of pride in her voice, "It's okay, sweetheart. Just say it." The words barely left her lips, but they carried warmth, encouragement, and reassurance. The toddler's lips parted slightly, and in a voice so small, it was almost swallowed by the ambient murmurs of the courtroom, she whispered 2 words, "Good boy." The effect was immediate, and profound. Rex's ears pricked forward, his head tilting slightly, as if to fully understand the meaning behind the sound. His tail, which had been swaying cautiously, began to wag in a measured rhythm, a physical acknowledgement of the toddler's presence and words. Officer Daniels felt a lump form in his throat, marveling at how a few simple syllables could unlock a reaction that was at once tender and powerful. Years of training, discipline, and command could never replicate the emotional authenticity of this moment. The courtroom erupted in soft gasps, followed by murmurs and whispers. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the scene unfolding before them. Even Judge Wilson, who had presided over countless cases, paused her gavel mid-motion, eyes widening slightly. She recognized immediately that this was no ordinary courtroom moment. This was something rare and extraordinary, a convergence of innocence, trust, and instinct that demanded full attention. Rex's response deepened as the toddler's small hand reached toward him. He stepped just slightly forward, careful and deliberate, maintaining discipline, but simultaneously inviting connection. The dog's eyes softened, revealing a gentleness that few people had ever seen outside of private interactions with Officer Daniels. It was a subtle acknowledgement, an understanding of the toddler's intent, and a demonstration of the profound bond that can exist between humans and animals, even without prior familiarity. The toddler giggled softly, encouraged by Rex's response. Her fingers brushed the dog's sleek coat, and he leaned in just slightly, careful not to startle her. The contrast was stark. The powerful, disciplined police K-9, trained for high-stakes operations, responding with care and patience to the trust of a tiny child. Officer Daniels knelt beside him, stroking Rex's neck gently, pride and amazement evident on his face. He had trained Rex for every imaginable scenario, but moments like this transcended training. Spectators murmured among themselves, many with tears welling in their eyes. It was a rare sight. Pure innocence meeting disciplined authority in a way that bypassed all expectations. The emotional resonance of the moment seemed to ripple outward, touching everyone in the room. Adults who had walked in expecting routine proceedings found themselves witnessing a profound display of trust, connection, and empathy. Children watched with wide eyes, inspired by the courage of someone their own age, and the gentle response of a being much larger and more powerful than themselves. The judge's expression softened. She set aside the official proceedings momentarily, captivated by the interaction. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, and she allowed herself to simply observe, as did the clerks and the attorneys. Even seasoned professionals, accustomed to the strictures of law and order, could not deny the emotional weight of the scene. It was a reminder that human experience, in its most tender and authentic form, could emerge in even the most formal and structured settings. The toddler, emboldened by the interaction, spoke the two words again, slightly louder this time. "Good boy." Rex's tail wagged more energetically, and he stepped closer, his movements deliberate and careful, as if aware of the delicate balance between enthusiasm and restraint. The child's laughter, pure and joyous, filled the room, a sound so light, yet so powerful, that it seemed to amplify the shared emotion of everyone present. Officer Daniels glanced around at the spectators, many of whom were smiling, some wiping away tears, all clearly moved by the simple yet extraordinary exchange. He reflected on the countless hours of training and preparation that had gone into building a K-9 capable of performing complex tasks under stress. Yet he realized that no training manual could have prepared him for this, the raw, unfiltered connection between a toddler and his partner, built entirely on trust and innocence. The courtroom itself seemed transformed. What had begun as a routine day of hearings had shifted into something far more significant, a collective experience of witnessing an unexpected miracle unfold in front of their eyes. The walls, lined with polished wood and solemn decor, no longer felt like mere symbols of law and procedure. Instead, they held the echoes of laughter, the subtle energy of awe, and the warmth of connection radiating from the child and the dog. As the toddler continued to engage with Rex, a soft, collective hush settled over the room. Spectators instinctively recognized the sanctity of the moment, refraining from distractions or interruptions. Every gesture, the tilt of the head, the wag of the tail, the small reach of the child's hand was observed and cherished. There was a profound sense that everyone present was part of something extraordinary, a moment that would linger in memory long after the gavel had fallen and the courtroom emptied. Rex, responding to the toddler's trust and kindness, lowered his head slightly, allowing her to pat his muzzle gently. The touch was brief, but it carried immense significance, a silent affirmation of acceptance, understanding, and calm. Officer Daniels remained kneeling beside him, ensuring the dog remained controlled, yet he could not help but smile at the visible affection and responsiveness displayed. The bond between his partner and the child was unfolding in real time, more authentic and moving than anything he had ever witnessed. The toddler's mother watched in awe, her own heart swelling with pride and emotion. She had known her daughter was brave, but seeing her approach Rex, speak her 2 words, and elicit such a response from the trained canine filled her with a mixture of astonishment and gratitude. She realized in that moment that innocence, courage, and a willingness to trust could accomplish something truly remarkable, even in a room filled with formality, authority, and expectation. Whispers continued to ripple through the courtroom, some commenting on the child's bravery, others on Rex's gentle response. The synergy between them was undeniable, a perfect dance of instinct, training, and pure-hearted interaction. Spectators, who had initially come to observe routine proceedings, now found themselves captivated by the narrative unfolding before them. A story far more compelling than any case or legal motion. Judge Wilson leaned back slightly, her eyes softening. In her years on the bench, she had seen countless cases, many of them tragic or contentious, but few moments had ever moved her as this one did. The interaction between the toddler and the canine officer reminded her that moments of beauty, trust, and humanity could emerge anywhere, even in the midst of law, rules, and discipline. Finally, after several moments of silent communion, Rex allowed the child to gently pat his head once more, stepping back with a calm dignity. The toddler clapped her tiny hands softly, delighted by the dog's gentle response. Officer Daniels straightened, his face glowing with pride, knowing that his partner had not only remained disciplined, but had also demonstrated a side of himself that few had ever seen in public. In those fleeting seconds, the courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary. The power of 2 words, spoken with sincerity and innocence, transforming a rigid, structured environment into a place of warmth, connection, and shared emotion. The story, unplanned yet unforgettable, was already taking shape, a narrative of courage, trust, and the undeniable bond that can exist between a child and a canine officer. As the mother hugged her daughter tightly, tears glistening in her eyes, she whispered softly, "You did it, sweetheart. You really did it." The toddler beamed, unaware of the ripple effect she had created in the room. Rex, now calm and attentive, remained at Officer Daniels' side, embodying both the strength of law enforcement and the gentleness that had just been revealed. The moment had passed, but its impact would linger, a memory etched in the hearts of everyone present, destined to be shared, recounted, and cherished for years to come. The courtroom, once filled with routine chatter and procedural focus, had transformed entirely. The ordinary rhythm of legal proceedings now seemed trivial compared to the remarkable scene that had just unfolded. Spectators whispered in awe, leaning forward on polished wooden benches, their faces glowing with emotion. A few children in the audience clutched their parents' hands tightly, eyes wide, completely captivated by the unexpected bond between a tiny human and a disciplined police dog. Even adults, hardened by years of bureaucracy and law, felt their hearts swell with a warmth they hadn't anticipated. Judge Wilson, presiding over the morning's hearing, lowered her gavel slowly, allowing herself a rare moment of appreciation for the extraordinary scene. She had witnessed countless courtroom dramas, arguments, testimonies, and tense confrontations, but few had ever evoked such a pure emotional response. A soft smile tugged at the corners of her lips as she observed the toddler clapping her tiny hands, laughing softly and reaching once more to pat Rex's head. The judge recognized instantly that this was more than a fleeting interaction. It was a moment that transcended the walls of the courthouse, a story that would resonate far beyond its wooden benches. The spectators reacted in waves. First came murmurs of astonishment, whispered comments like, "Look at her. She's not scared at all, and the dog actually trusts her." Then, smiles broke out across the room, followed by quiet laughter and soft gasps of delight. A few people even wiped away tears, unable to contain their emotional response to such unassuming yet profound courage. The innocence of a child, combined with the intelligence and gentle nature of a trained canine, had created a tableau that was as beautiful as it was unexpected. Officer Daniels, kneeling beside Rex, allowed a subtle chuckle to escape, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and amazement. He had trained Rex for countless scenarios: high-stakes searches, suspect apprehensions, even life-threatening confrontations. But none of his experiences had prepared him for the raw authenticity and emotional resonance of a toddler's trust. He stroked Rex's neck gently, feeling the dog's muscles relax under his hand, aware that Rex was responding not to commands, but to the child's innocence, curiosity, and warmth. It was a testament to the bond they shared, as well as a profound reminder of the emotional intelligence that animals can possess. The toddler's mother leaned down, embracing her daughter tightly, whispering words of pride and reassurance. "You did it, sweetheart. You were brave, and the dog liked you," she murmured. The little girl's eyes sparkled, her laughter mingling with the subdued applause and quiet chatter of the courtroom. Her small hand remained extended briefly toward Rex, who allowed her touch with gentle patience, reinforcing the extraordinary trust between them. It was a simple gesture, yet in its simplicity lay an undeniable profundity, the power of innocence, courage, and genuine connection. Spectators began to exchange hushed conversations, discussing the unusual but moving scenario they had just witnessed. A local reporter, who had been present to cover routine legal proceedings, instinctively raised a camera to capture the interaction, sensing the viral potential of the moment. Phones appeared discreetly from pockets and purses as the audience tried to preserve the scene, documenting what would quickly become a story shared far beyond the courthouse walls. The courtroom had become a theater of emotion, a stage where discipline, authority, and innocence intertwined in a way that captivated everyone present. Even the attorneys, momentarily forgetting their formal roles, leaned forward to observe the scene, impressed by the rare display of human-animal connection. Some exchanged quiet nods of approval, recognizing the profound impact a single innocent act could have on a room full of people. A few muttered softly, "This is incredible," or "I've never seen anything like this in court before." The courtroom, a place normally defined by rules, structure, and decorum, had become a shared space of wonder, laughter, and unexpected warmth. Judge Wilson, regaining her composure, allowed herself a private reflection. She considered the countless cases she had presided over, the arguments, testimonies, and motions that had passed through her courtroom over the years. Few had evoked such universal appreciation or emotional resonance. Here, in a matter of moments, a toddler's courage and a dog's gentle response had shifted the atmosphere entirely. The judge silently acknowledged the profound lesson before her, that sometimes the simplest gestures, a smile, a touch, a few words, could speak louder than any argument, testimony, or ruling. Officer Daniels watched the child interact with Rex, noting the subtle nuances of behavior. The dog had maintained perfect discipline, yet his gentle responses revealed an adaptability that few people ever observed. Rex seemed attuned not just to commands, but to emotion itself, responding to the child's joy, curiosity, and trust with a calmness and patience that defied expectation. Daniels felt a deep sense of pride, not just in his dog's training, but in the ability of such moments to remind him why he had chosen this line of work: to protect, serve, and sometimes witness the quiet miracles of everyday life. The crowd's reaction grew as the toddler continued to engage with Rex. Quiet laughter, soft applause, and whispered commentary filled the room. Spectators shared looks of mutual understanding, silently acknowledging the extraordinary nature of what they had just seen. Adults felt reminded of the purity of childhood courage, while children in the audience saw a reflection of themselves, imagining how they might connect with a being far larger and more disciplined than themselves. It was a teaching moment, a subtle yet powerful demonstration of the universality of trust, curiosity, and empathy. Meanwhile, the toddler, encouraged by the positive attention and Rex's gentle responses, reached out once more, gently patting his head. The dog leaned into the touch just slightly, careful not to overwhelm, but fully participating in the connection. Officer Daniels allowed the interaction to continue uninterrupted, aware that it was a rare moment to witness and an opportunity to demonstrate the emotional intelligence of trained service animals. The energy in the courtroom shifted completely from formality to wonder, from discipline to tenderness, from expectation to shared human experience. The media present in the room began taking notes and photographs, realizing immediately that they had stumbled upon a story far more compelling than any routine court proceedings. Phones recorded videos, cameras captured the scene, and reporters whispered excitedly among themselves, anticipating how the story would resonate with the wider community. Already, they recognized the universal appeal: a toddler, fearless and innocent, forming a connection with a powerful canine officer in a courtroom filled with authority and expectation. The narrative practically wrote itself, promising warmth, emotion, and inspiration for those who would witness it later. As the toddler's laughter rang softly through the room, a collective sense of awe settled over the spectators. Even the judge allowed herself a small, private smile, silently acknowledging the rarity of the moment. Adults whispered about how such interactions reminded them of the goodness in the world, while children watched with rapt attention, inspired by the courage of someone their own age. It was a reminder, tangible and undeniable, that extraordinary connections could occur anywhere, even in the most structured and formal environments. Finally, after several moments, the interaction began to wind down. The toddler patted Rex gently one last time before leaning back, satisfied with the connection she had established. Rex stepped back, remaining calm, attentive, and obedient, while Officer Daniels offered a soft pat and quiet praise. The room exhaled collectively, the energy shifting back to normal, yet carrying a lingering warmth that would remain long after the gavel fell. The moment had ended, but its impact was indelible. In those fleeting minutes, the courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary: courage, innocence, and empathy intersecting with discipline, authority, and intelligence. A toddler had spoken two simple words, and a dog had responded in kind, creating a ripple effect of emotion, admiration, and inspiration that touched every person present. Spectators left with hearts full. Mothers whispered to their children about bravery, and officers reflected on the power of trust, patience, and connection. It was a shared experience that would be recounted, celebrated, and remembered for years to come. As the courtroom slowly returned to its procedural rhythm, whispers of admiration lingered in the air. The story of the toddler and Rex had already begun to circulate in hushed conversations, and Officer Daniels knew that, by the end of the day, it would extend far beyond the courthouse walls. He glanced at Rex, who remained calm, obedient, yet alert, a professional ready for duty, but now also a silent hero in a story that had unexpectedly captured hearts. The toddler's mother squeezed her daughter's hand one last time before allowing her to settle back on the bench. "You did something special today," she said softly, a mixture of pride and awe in her tone. The little girl's smile was radiant, unburdened by ego or expectation. She had discovered, in her own small way, the power of kindness, courage, and connection, the ability of two simple words to transform an ordinary space into something extraordinary. By the time the courthouse doors closed that afternoon, the story of the toddler and Rex had already begun to ripple far beyond the wooden benches and polished floors. Reporters who had been covering routine court proceedings quickly recognized the significance of what they had witnessed and shared preliminary notes, photographs, and videos with local media outlets. The clips were short but powerful. A tiny child speaking two simple words, "Good boy," to a disciplined canine officer and eliciting a gentle, attentive response. Within hours, the story had begun to gain traction. Social media, always hungry for moments of warmth and wonder, amplified the event almost instantly. Short videos, captured by witnesses in the courtroom, began circulating across local community groups and national platforms alike. Comments poured in by the hundreds, expressions of delight, admiration, and disbelief at the bravery and innocence of a 3-year-old interacting so naturally with a trained police dog. People who had never set foot in the courthouse felt connected to the moment, as though they too had witnessed the tender exchange. Locally, the courthouse staff began receiving calls from community members and local news stations. People wanted to know the names of the toddler and her mother, the story behind the interaction, and of course, information about Rex, the K-9 officer who had captured the hearts of everyone in the room. While the courthouse maintained a level of discretion to protect the child's privacy, the narrative of courage, trust, and unexpected connection spread quickly. Every recounting seemed to carry an emotional charge that kept audiences captivated. Within law enforcement circles, the story became a topic of conversation almost immediately. Officers and handlers across the city shared anecdotes of their own experiences with K-9 partners. Comparing notes and discussing the remarkable interaction between a child, Rex, many agreed that while they had trained dogs for obedience, protection, and detection, moments like this, unpredictable, tender, and profoundly emotional, reminded them why they chose this line of work. The story served as both a celebration of Rex's training and a testament to the power of instinct, patience, and empathy in animals. The toddler and her mother, initially unaware of the growing attention, were soon contacted by local reporters eager to capture their story. They approached the situation cautiously, wanting to protect the child's privacy, but also recognizing the positive impact his story could have. Interviews were conducted with sensitivity and care, highlighting the innocence and bravery of the little girl, the professionalism of Rex, and the incredible bond that had formed in those fleeting moments. Each retelling emphasized simplicity: 2 words, courage, trust, and a gentle dog. Community members, inspired by the story, began sharing their own experiences with pets, children, and acts of kindness. Parents posted photos of their own toddlers, interacting with family pets or community animals, often recounting moments of courage or innocence that mirrored what had been witnessed in the courtroom. Local schools incorporated the story into lessons about bravery, empathy, and trust, using it as a tangible example of how small actions could have meaningful effects. Children, in particular, found the narrative captivating. It wasn't just a story about a dog, it was about courage, connection, and the extraordinary potential within everyday life. Meanwhile, Rex and Officer Daniels became minor celebrities in their own right. Photos of the K-9 officer kneeling beside the toddler circulated widely, capturing the perfect balance between discipline, authority, and gentle responsiveness. Social media posts praised the professionalism of the officer and the emotional intelligence of the dog, highlighting the remarkable interaction as an example of the unique capabilities of K-9 units. The story transcended typical interest. It became an emblem of warmth, a symbol of the unexpected joy that could arise in the most structured and formal environments. The courthouse itself experienced a subtle transformation. Staff, once accustomed to routine procedural monotony, spoke in hushed tones about the extraordinary moment they had witnessed. Visitors trickled in, some curious to see Rex, others simply hoping to catch a glimpse of the dog who had won the hearts of the community alongside a tiny toddler. The atmosphere shifted from formality to warmth, and even the typically austere hallways seemed to echo with whispers of awe, admiration, and lingering joy. Locally, the media framed the story as a heartwarming human interest piece. Toddler shows incredible bravery with police K-9 in courtroom. 2 words. One heroic K-9 moment. And similar headlines appeared in print and online. Journalists emphasized the simplicity of the event, noting how a 3-year-old's innocence could create a profound moment that captivated a room full of adults, officers, and officials. The narrative appealed to a broad audience, inspiring discussions about courage, trust, and the unique ways children can communicate with animals. As the story continued to spread, social media comments from around the country highlighted the universal appeal of the moment. People shared their own experiences with children and animals, reflecting on the ways innocence and empathy could transcend boundaries of age, species, or circumstance. Many noted how rare it was to witness such unguarded trust in public, especially involving a professional law enforcement dog. Yet here it was, undeniable and heartwarming, a story that bridged communities and resonated on multiple levels. The toddler herself, blissfully unaware of her newfound fame, continued her days with the quiet confidence that comes from being brave and kind. To her, Rex was simply a friendly dog, a companion in a moment of curiosity and play. But to the adults who had witnessed the interaction, to the officers and community members sharing the story, and to the countless people engaging with videos and photographs online, the encounter became emblematic of something larger, the unexpected ways in which courage and innocence could inspire, connect, and transform a community. Officer Daniels, observing the public response, reflected quietly on the events. He had trained Rex extensively, fostering obedience, responsiveness, and emotional awareness, but the story unfolding in the media reminded him of the deeper purpose behind their work. Law enforcement was not just about enforcing rules or catching criminals. It was about building trust, protecting communities, and demonstrating empathy in moments both large and small. The interaction with the toddler, he realized, had showcased all of these qualities in a single, unforgettable act. Within days, the story had reached far beyond the local community. National news outlets picked up the narrative, drawn by its emotional resonance and universal appeal. Social media algorithms amplified the story further, ensuring that images, videos, and articles reached millions. People marveled at the simplicity and power of 2 words, spoken by a 3-year-old, and the gentle acknowledgement of a trained K-9 officer. It was a reminder that even small, seemingly ordinary gestures could have extraordinary consequences. Across the country, parents shared the story with their children, emphasizing bravery, empathy, and trust. Teachers incorporated it into lessons on courage and kindness. Animal trainers cited Rex's response as a demonstration of emotional intelligence and training excellence. And everywhere the story spread, it inspired awe, joy, and a renewed sense of faith in the profound impact of simple, genuine human interactions. The ripple effect continued to grow, leaving the community, the media, and countless individuals with a sense of wonder. 2 words uttered quietly in a courtroom had captured attention, inspired hearts, and demonstrated the extraordinary capacity for connection between humans and animals. And while the toddler remained blissfully unaware of the attention she had garnered, the impact of her courage and innocence would continue to resonate, reminding everyone that even in structured, serious environments, magic could happen when trust, empathy, and bravery met. What began as a small, quiet courtroom moment had now exploded into a nationwide story. News outlets from across the country picked up the footage of the toddler speaking her 2 words, "Good boy," to Rex. The disciplined canine officer and the emotional resonance of the interaction was undeniable. Television anchors replayed the clip multiple times, each time pausing to highlight the subtle gestures. The toddler's gentle reach, Rex's careful lean, and the unspoken bond forming between them. It was a story that transcended traditional news. It wasn't about crime, politics, or policy. It was about courage, empathy, and connection, simple yet profoundly moving. Social media amplified the narrative exponentially. Videos went viral, with millions of views across platforms. Hashtags like #GoodBoyToddler, #RexTheHero, and #CourtroomCourage began trending, creating online communities of viewers who shared, commented, and celebrated the moment. People posted their reactions, some in tears, others smiling broadly, and shared personal stories of children, pets, and unexpected moments of bravery. The story became a cultural touchpoint, a reminder that even small acts could inspire people in profound ways. The toddler's mother, initially overwhelmed by the attention, found herself being contacted by national news agencies requesting interviews. She approached the situation carefully, ensuring her daughter's privacy was protected while still sharing the heart of the story. She didn't think about being brave or famous, the mother explained in one interview. She just wanted to be kind, and somehow that became something everyone could admire. Her words captured the essence of the event, emphasizing innocence, authenticity, and the natural courage of a child unburdened by adult fears. Officer Daniels and Rex were also thrust into the national spotlight. Police departments from across the country praised their professionalism, training, and the extraordinary emotional intelligence demonstrated by Rex. Canine trainers and handlers discussed the interaction in interviews and online forums, emphasizing that while obedience and discipline were critical, the ability of a canine to read human emotion and respond gently to trust was equally remarkable. Rex, once a local hero, had become a symbol of the emotional depth and responsiveness possible in service animals. Television segments highlighted the story repeatedly, often showing side-by-side clips of the toddler reaching out and Rex responding, emphasizing the unspoken communication between them. Experts in child development weighed in, noting that the toddler's courage, empathy, and calmness were exceptional traits that demonstrated remarkable emotional intelligence for her age. Psychologists commented on how children can sometimes perceive and connect with animals on a level adults cannot, drawing attention to the instinctive, unfiltered nature of their empathy. Across social media, families began sharing videos and photos of their own children interacting with pets, inspired by the toddler's bravery. Teachers incorporated the story into classroom discussions, using it as an example of courage, kindness, and empathy. Even corporate and non-profit organizations highlighted the story in newsletters, emphasizing lessons about leadership, emotional intelligence, and trust. What had begun as a fleeting, intimate moment in a courthouse had now become a beacon of inspiration across the nation. The courtroom where it all happened saw a wave of visitors curious to witness the site of the historic interaction. Local reporters and photographers documented the benches, the spot where the toddler had sat, and even recreated the moment symbolically for audiences who had never seen the original footage. Children visiting the courthouse with school groups were told the story with reverence, instructed on the importance of courage, kindness, and respect, not just for animals, but for every living being. Meanwhile, Rex and Officer Daniels became minor celebrities in their own right. Invitations for interviews, appearances, and community demonstrations poured in. Officers highlighted the story in public safety campaigns, emphasizing not just law enforcement, but community engagement and the potential for positive, inspiring interactions with K-9 units. Rex remained the epitome of professionalism, calm and disciplined as ever, yet now a symbol of the emotional intelligence that could exist within highly trained service animals. National magazines published feature articles about the toddler, her mother, and Rex, describing the courtroom encounter as a moment of pure innocence meeting professional discipline. Each retelling focused on the simplicity and authenticity of the interaction. Unlike sensationalized news stories, this one relied on emotional truth. A tiny human, unafraid and authentic, speaking 2 words, and a trained dog responding with gentleness, awareness, and patience. The story resonated with readers of all ages and backgrounds, becoming a source of inspiration, hope, and joy. Schools and libraries began hosting story hours and discussions, inviting children to hear the tale, ask questions, and even write their own reflections. Parents spoke about bravery, empathy, and kindness, using the toddler's words as a bridge to teach important life lessons. Teachers incorporated interactive activities, allowing students to role-play interactions with animals, explore themes of trust, and understand the emotional connection between humans and non-human companions. In this way, the story not only captured attention, but became an educational tool, fostering emotional intelligence in children nationwide. Meanwhile, local community centers and police departments used the story as a platform for outreach. K-9 units demonstrated their training and responsiveness, educating families on safety, responsibility, and the role of service animals. Rex, ever calm and disciplined, participated in demonstrations, displaying obedience while subtly reminding audiences of the profound emotional depth he had shown with the toddler. Communities everywhere marveled at the extraordinary intersection of innocence and training, courage and empathy, and began sharing their own stories of connection and trust. As the media coverage expanded, the story caught the attention of humanitarian and animal advocacy organizations. They highlighted the event as an example of how human-animal interactions could foster compassion, understanding, and emotional growth in children. Fundraisers and community initiatives cited the moment as inspiration, emphasizing the potential for small acts of kindness to create widespread positive impact. The toddler and Rex had unintentionally sparked a movement, a reminder that simplicity, bravery, and trust could resonate far beyond the moment itself. Yet, despite the fame, the toddler remained blissfully unaware of her newfound celebrity. To her, Rex was simply a friendly dog, a companion in a brief, extraordinary encounter. Her mother observed with a mixture of pride and amazement, realizing that the authenticity of her daughter's courage was what had made the story so compelling. She reflected on how innocence, unburdened by the pressures of performance or expectation, had the power to inspire millions, an extraordinary reminder that greatness could emerge in the simplest of moments. Officer Daniels, watching Rex at rest in the kennel after a long day of interviews and appearances, reflected on the journey from a quiet courthouse to nationwide recognition. He realized that while training, discipline, and preparation were critical to their work, it was moments like this unpredictable, authentic, and emotionally profound that left a lasting impact. Rex had not only performed impeccably, but had demonstrated an emotional intelligence that could not be taught, only nurtured. Their story had transcended law enforcement, becoming a cultural touchstone of inspiration, courage, and connection. Across the country, families, children, and communities shared the story repeatedly. News anchors replayed the footage, journalists wrote feature stories, and social media users continued to spread the narrative. Two simple words, spoken with bravery and sincerity, had ignited a chain reaction of awe, inspiration, and admiration. In classrooms, offices, homes, and police departments, the moment served as a reminder that extraordinary experiences often arise from simplicity, authenticity, and trust, the unassuming magic that can transform lives, even in unexpected settings. By the end of the week, the toddler and Rex's story had become iconic. Headlines celebrated courage and innocence. Media segments highlighted emotional intelligence, and families across the country found joy in sharing the tale with one another. The courtroom encounter was no longer just a local anecdote. It was a national symbol of empathy, bravery, and the enduring, profound bond that could exist between humans and animals. And as the toddler slept that night, blissfully unaware of her newfound fame, Rex rested beside Officer Daniels, a calm and gentle hero in a story that would live on far beyond that courtroom floor. Weeks after the courtroom moment, the story of the toddler and Rex continued to captivate hearts and inspire communities across the nation. Families recounted the tale at dinner tables, classrooms shared it during story hours, and local newspapers revisited the narrative in follow-up pieces, exploring the profound effect that two simple words, "good boy," had on a disciplined K-9 officer and the people who witnessed it. The story had transcended the boundaries of law enforcement, social media, and ordinary human interest, becoming a symbol of courage, trust, and connection. The toddler herself remained blissfully unaware of the enormous attention her actions had generated. To her, Rex was simply a friendly dog, a companion who had listened to her voice and responded with gentle patience. Her mother watched with a mixture of pride, awe, and a touch of disbelief, realizing that the authenticity of her daughter's courage was precisely what had made the moment so compelling. It was a reminder that true bravery did not require grandeur, only sincerity, kindness, and the willingness to step forward. In communities across the nation, the story inspired tangible action. Schools hosted empathy and kindness workshops, where children practiced gentle interactions with animals and learned to trust and communicate with one another. Local animal shelters reported an increase in volunteer interest from families wanting to experience similar moments of connection. Children drew pictures and wrote letters inspired by the toddler's bravery, sharing their creations online and in local exhibits. What had been a single moment in a courtroom had blossomed into a nationwide movement of compassion, courage, and awareness of the human-animal bond. Police departments also noticed the broader impact of the story. Rex became a symbol of the emotional intelligence inherent in K-9 units, and officers highlighted the encounter in public outreach programs. Workshops on K-9 behavior, empathy training, and community engagement emphasized the importance of understanding not only a dog's physical capabilities, but also their emotional responses. Rex's calm, gentle behavior with a toddler served as a powerful teaching tool, demonstrating how trust, patience, and careful attention could foster connections that extended far beyond law enforcement objectives. The media continued to follow the story, highlighting community reactions, school activities, and family experiences inspired by the toddler's bravery. Television programs and online platforms ran segments, analyzing why the story resonated so deeply. It wasn't merely the novelty of a child interacting with a police dog, but the emotional authenticity, the courage displayed by someone so small, and the empathetic response of a highly trained animal. Experts in psychology, child development, and animal behavior emphasized that moments like this remind society of the profound capacity for trust and empathy inherent in both humans and animals. The toddler's mother reflected privately on the journey from an ordinary courthouse visit to national recognition. She marveled at the way a simple act of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives she would never meet and inspiring acts of courage and compassion across the country. In her eyes, the story was proof that innocence and sincerity could shine brighter than sophistication, media campaigns, or polished messaging. Her daughter's bravery was uncalculated and genuine, a lesson that could not be taught but only lived. Rex, meanwhile, remained the calm and disciplined professional that Officer Daniels had trained him to be. Yet the courtroom moment had revealed a deeper layer of emotional intelligence that few had witnessed before. He continued to participate in canine demonstrations, school visits, and public events, serving not only as a symbol of law enforcement excellence, but also as a reminder that strength and gentleness could coexist. Children, parents, and officers alike learned from his behavior, understanding that patience, attentiveness, and empathy were as important as obedience and skill. The community surrounding the courthouse also embraced the story. Local businesses, inspired by the viral moment, displayed photographs and banners celebrating the encounter. Libraries held storytelling sessions where children could reenact the moment, complete with plush dogs, wooden benches, and simple phrases like, "Good boy." Neighborhood events featured presentations on canine training, child safety, and the importance of trust and communication. In every instance, the toddler's bravery and Rex's gentle response were central, reminding participants of the enduring power of small acts to generate widespread inspiration. Nationally, the story even sparked discussions among policymakers and child advocacy groups. It became a case study for programs encouraging early childhood development, empathy education, and positive interactions with animals. Experts highlighted that the toddler's courage and calm demeanor, paired with Rex's intuitive response, illustrated the profound benefits of fostering trust and emotional awareness from a young age. The encounter was cited as evidence that extraordinary learning experiences could arise from spontaneous, authentic interactions rather than structured lessons alone. Even in popular culture, the story began to take hold. Social media challenges encouraged children to safely interact with their pets and practice expressions of kindness, tagging posts with hashtags inspired by the original encounter. Artists created illustrations capturing the moment, emphasizing the bond between the toddler and Rex. And authors wrote children's books based on the true story, emphasizing themes of bravery, empathy, and trust. The narrative had moved beyond its original context, becoming a universal tale of inspiration and moral significance. For the toddler's family, the impact was both humbling and joyous. They navigated interviews and media attention with care, ensuring the child's well-being remained paramount while sharing the inspirational story responsibly. Each retelling emphasized simplicity, 2 words, courage, and a gentle dog. By keeping the narrative grounded in authenticity, they allowed the moment to continue inspiring others without turning the child into a spectacle. It was a delicate balance, but one they managed with grace, understanding that the true power of the story lay in its honesty. Rex's bond with the toddler became a recurring example for both law enforcement professionals and ordinary citizens. Officers cited the story in training sessions, emphasizing how observing and responding to subtle human signals could strengthen trust and cooperation. Families across the nation took note, seeing in the encounter a model for fostering empathy, patience, and understanding between generations and species. The moment had transcended the courtroom, becoming a lesson in connection, courage, and emotional intelligence that was widely accessible. Years later, the story continued to resonate. Retellings emphasized the simplicity and purity of the interaction, reminding audiences that inspiration often arises from small, unassuming acts. The toddler grew up hearing the story, internalizing lessons about kindness, bravery, and trust. Rex, though older, remained an example of patience and empathy, demonstrating that training and discipline could harmonize with understanding and warmth. Together, they had created a narrative that endured, one that would continue to inspire future generations. Ultimately, the legacy of the courtroom encounter was not the viral videos or media coverage, but the emotional and cultural impact it generated. 2 words spoken with courage and sincerity had transformed a formal, ordinary environment into a space of connection, joy, and inspiration. Communities shared the story. Schools taught it, and families recounted it, all recognizing that the simple combination of innocence, bravery, and empathy could resonate across time, space, and circumstance. The toddler's 2 words, "Good boy," had unlocked more than a gentle response from Rex. They had sparked a movement of awareness, kindness, and emotional intelligence. They had reminded adults of the power of courage unburdened by ego, and children of their innate potential to inspire change. And most importantly, they had forged an enduring bond between a tiny human and a disciplined canine officer that would forever serve as a symbol of what could be achieved when trust, bravery, and empathy met. In the hearts of those who witnessed it firsthand, and in the millions who heard the story afterward, the moment became immortal. A tiny child, a gentle canine, 2 words, and an entire world reminded that courage and kindness could change everything.